All right, guys, let's kick it off, shall we? Thank you very much, love. King Queen offsuit on the button. Gonna be 3-betting a lot versus cutoff. I'm gonna make it 7 just because he min raised. Don't know much about the player. I expect to take down the pot pretty often here with just a small c-bet, which is exactly what I'm gonna do. Okay, we instantly get raised, and it's a min raise as well. We can continue, I feel, with the King of Hearts, and we can also continue, given that we've got the straight draw with the 10 still to come. So I don't mind calling here. We just have to kind of proceed with caution. Okay, that card, pretty good for us. I do think we can still bet for value. I do expect to see a lot more folds on that turn. And now that we have the King High flush, we're only really losing to the Ace High flush now, right? So we can get paid off. Like Jacks probably still pays us off since the board isn't paired. So I'm actually just going to rip it in here. Unfortunately, villain folds, but that happens. Ten queen off in the small blind. Fold if it opens before us, raise otherwise. King Jack offsuit on the button. I'm pretty sure I 3-bet here at least some of the time, right? It is a mixed frequency hand, but I'm actually going to widen my range kind of as an exploit because people just kind of overfold to 3-bets at this level. Right, Jack Ace offsuit would definitely open. We get 3-bet from the big blind. I would say this is a pretty easy fold. We're against an opponent who's got a 3-bet percentage of only 5, so he's definitely on the value side. So we can just exploitively fold here every single time, I think. Ranges are going to be pretty tight in that configuration. Like I don't think I was under the gun. I think I was hijack. Yeah, we need 3-bets from the big blind. He's going to be pretty strong. Going to fold. Oh, straight white. Saw him here yesterday. Right, I'm going to open Queen 10 off on the button. Pretty standard. Queen 3 suited. I mean, it opens so we fold, but it's probably still a little bit wide to be opening with from the cutoff. Maybe Queen 5 plus sort of thing. Right, someone limps to us in the small blind. I'm just going to check. No reason to be raising here. I expect villain to be leading out quite often on a board of this texture. We can raise or we can call. I don't mind just calling here. Don't feel like there's too much of a reason to be building the pot. Now that he checks back to us on the turn, however, I feel like we probably have a mandatory bet here. Do we have a mandatory bluff? We probably do, just because we lose to way too much of villain's air. And I feel like half pot is probably enough to get it done against this type of player. And yeah, of course, he just snap folds. So I'm suspecting that was some kind of busted heart draw. It was ranges there were pretty polarized, I would say. And the player struck me as a bit weaker, which is why I chose half pot on the river. I don't think there's any reason for me to be going 2/3 pot, which would be my usual size. Just because the times he does show up with an ace, we lose less, and I don't think that player is going to be. I think that player is going to be inelastic to bet sizing. King 4 suited, we're going to open here when it folds to us. We get 3-bet by a player who looks relatively nitty, and we see 2 smooth calls. Now, you might say that we're pretty well priced in here, but I'm going to go ahead and fold, mainly because of this guy here. Like, SPR is just going to be so freaking small. Like, yeah, we're pretty well priced in to see a flop with a king high suited hand, but it is a pretty dicey spot going 4 ways to the flop. Especially when we unblock all aces. It feels like the reverse implied odds of a hand like that are like a little bit too high. All right, ace jack we open. We get 3-bet almost instantaneously, and the guy's sizing is on the larger side. This is probably just a smooth call, I would think, a lot of the time. So we're getting 3-bet by the hijack. It's actually a mixed frequency 4-bet. I am going to roll it because I don't know if a 4-bet is a good enough exploit here. All right, we do flop a gut shot straight draw, but we are not in the best shape possible. I expect to face a small sort of 1/3 bet here, but villain does go half. I'd say our implied odds are pretty high. If we do see a king, we do unblock all villain's diamond bluffs. And we're not in very good shape anymore. Yeah, villains just snap, sort of half potting. I expect this to be queens plus a lot of the time. Are we getting villain stack if we make our king? We probably are, but the odds aren't really there for us to be calling. It is a tough one. We probably can just call and then get away from it. But I'm actually going to fold here. I think if I play it that way, I probably have to fold the flop though, if I'm honest. Tricky. So that one's like kind of an interesting one where we unblock all of villain's possible bluffs, but at the same time, um, his bluffs, some of his bluffing hands block our outs, and one of his value hands also blocks our outs. So pocket threes, I'm going to open from the cutoff. Right, we get smooth called by the button. A lot of the time, button is going to have a weaker pocket pair, so a small c-bet is going to get the job done relatively often. Sometimes he's going to have some trash hand like king 10 offsuit, which we've seen on occasion. But the small c-bet when checked to, and when you're the pre-flop aggressor, just prints basically. Not going to go for the steal attempt there. We'll be check folding king 2 off. Check 7 suited. First to act from the cutoff. It's a high frequency raise, but I'm just going to make it a pure raise. Since these guys, they just fold too often pre-flop. Or you see a call in the big blind. Now, I think we can small c-bet or we can check here. I think either one is fine. I do prefer the small c-bet just because we have air. Obviously, villain is still able to continue with some of his range. And I think I prefer checking the river here. And if we don't see a diamond, we can maybe go for a river bet when checked to. Yeah, I feel like a lot of the time villain's going to have ace X or he's at least going to have a diamond. And I don't think we really have the fold equity on the turn. Not when villain just snap checks like that. And the small bet just reeks of value and we have air anyway. So it's one of those spots where we try to take it down with that C bet, doesn't work. Kind of tighten things up a little bit. I don't want to get too maniacal with my bluffs when I've only just kind of sat down to play. All right, we have rockets in the big blind. And this is an interesting action. So we see an open in the cutoff, and then we see a 3-bet from the small blind. So I'm going to cold 4-bet this hand. And I think 25 in terms of sizing is appropriate. And we actually get the fold, which is disappointing, but it happens. A cold 4-bet is going to look ridiculously strong and value heavy, which it is. I don't think I'm often doing that as a bluff, even in these games. All right, king queen off. We will be opening from the button. We get flat called by the big blind. Now, this is an interesting board because it does connect pretty well with villain's range, but the reverse implied odds of his drawing hands when they do make it there is quite large since we have the open ender. So I don't actually mind betting here. Okay, when villain does snap check, I am a little bit more inclined to check back behind now when the board pairs like that. And the river card being completely dead and him checking to us, I think we can definitely make a bluff here. We're sometimes going to get called by 10x or 8x. But I feel like villain's probably going to have more hands like kind of 6-7, 7-8, maybe like 7-9. Well, 7-9 gets there, so that's wrong. Queen King offsuit under the gun, I'll be opening. We flop middle pair when we get flattered from the small blinds. I think a small c-bet is appropriate here. Villain might call one bet with a hand like 7s or 8s. When he donks like that, when villain just donk bets the club there, I am definitely less inclined to continue, especially at that sizing. I don't really know who's building a turn donk range on a board of that texture, but hey. Maybe that is a good play, just because the ace of clubs was out there. I don't know. Because, yeah, the ace of clubs being on the board, it does block a lot of my... it does block a lot of my flush combos, which villain may definitely be aware of. Here, I'm just folding, right? A limp and then a bet. When I would have just folded pre anyway, like, who cares? See, I'm not going to read too much into that player who donked the turn before because I can see why that might be actually a legitimate play to be making. Because it is pretty polarized if you think about it. Maybe polarized is the wrong word. It's actually quite mergy if you think about it. Okay, we flop top pair on a pretty dry board, I would say. Although it's probably not as dry as it seems because there's still hands like 9-10 there. There are medium pocket pairs that can call small bets, so we're going to make the small C bet. I wouldn't be surprised if villain can continue with hands like 7-9, 9-10, etc. Maybe J10, K10, things like that. Probably finds it hard to continue with a hand like pocket 5s through to 7s. And then we're pretty happy if he continues with a hand like Queen 10, Queen 9. King 7 off on the button. We're going to fold to a raise in front of us. 3 king off, we're going to fold. King 9 offsuit, I will be opening from the cutoff. King 9 offsuit is one of those more sort of like lower frequency hands. So yeah, we've got complete air here. We're going to make that small C bet because we're check 2. I do expect villain to be calling with a lot of his heart combos. We do block the nuttier end of his heart combos. So I think we can still bet and put a little bit of pressure on in the event he is holding a sort of weaker Queen X type hand. But when he's snap calling behind like that, I really don't like it. I don't think we have much fold equity at all. And we actually chop with King High, which is hilarious. So guy's calling with a 4 of hearts, so I'm going to label this guy with a green border immediately. And like you could say I should have bet that river, but with villain snap calling like that, no way, no way. I am going to 3-bet Ace Jack offsuit here from the small blind. This is a cutoff open. Feels pretty standard. We get the fold, which is great. Jack 9 suited in the big blind. We're going to be defending a lot, especially versus the small blind. Are we 3-betting? Well, it folds to us. But Jack 9 suited is usually calling. Sometimes 3-bets at a lower frequency. Ace 6 suited in the small blind. Versus this kind of action, you might consider squeezing here sometimes, although Ace 5 is a better hand to be doing that with. In this case, I am going to fold. Yeah, like Ace 4, Ace 5, much better candidates to be 3-bet squeezing there. Just because of the wheel equity in addition to your ace blocker. Okay, we get the Cowboys on the button. All right, seems that we are going to be first to act. And it folds through, which sucks. 8 ace offsuit in the cutoff. I will be opening. I will not anymore. Oh, a micro Saturday KO tournament. That actually sounds like it could be quite a bit of fun. All right, J8 under the gun. We make a standard open. We get 3-bet on the button against an unknown player. We don't have position. Our holding isn't great. I would say it's a pretty easy fold. I would say AJ is like a pure fold in that kind of configuration anyway, independent of the player read, unless villain is like a complete maniac. Right, we see pocket tens in the hijack. And it folds through, which is a bummer. A7 offsuit on the button. We will be opening that. As you can see, people are folding pre-flop a lot in these games. So just a quick note, you should be adjusting your opening ranges so that they're a little bit wider, and you should also be adjusting your 3-bets from in position, from the cutoff, from button, etc. To be a little bit wider as well. We've got rockets in the big blind, so this is a pretty straightforward 3-bet for us. Villain decides to call, and we see a quite interesting flop. We got the 2 kings on the board and the 2 hearts. Now, we do block a lot of villains' bluffs, so I think we can actually check here. Now, when the queen comes on the turn, it's not terrible for us. The fact that there are 2 flush draws out there and we block the nutted end of both is interesting. So I think we can just check and maybe cool down a hand like ace-queen. Like ace-queen might try to take a stab here, and we can call and be completely fine with that. I don't think the river really changes a whole lot. The board and our hand does block a lot of the villain's bluffs, which is not great. So this is a little bit of a tricky one to navigate. I don't think villain's going to be comfortable betting a hand like ace-queen here a lot of the time. Yeah, he's checking that one back. I wouldn't be surprised to see ace-queen. 9-10 of spades, okay. That's quite loose, but hey. We should definitely label that, guys. So when you see something like that happen, which is like a little bit unusual for your game, you should definitely note it. So here we're going to put. I'm just going to run the clock down on that one while I make my note. Called 3-bet from UTG versus BB with 9-10 suited. And I'm just going to leave the color yellow for now. It doesn't really matter. Yeah, you need to know things like that because my perception of his pre-flop range was obviously a lot tighter than his actual pre-flop range. And so you just need to note these things going forward so that you can adjust accordingly if you ever get in a 3-bet pot with that player again. You need to know that he's capable of showing up with hands like that. King 9 suited, I'm going to fold. I would sometimes elect to 3-bet there, but I feel more comfortable doing it with a hand like King 10 suited, probably. King 9 suited is a low frequency 3-bet, so like, you know, going back to what I said, you could do it as an exploit. But I'm more inclined to do it from the button than the cutoff, I feel. People seem to be calling 3-bets a little bit more from the blinds and from the button. Right, this Johnny Be Good character, he's not actually a fish. I mean, he is playing short stacked, but he's actually just a bad reg. I'm going to open 10-9 off on the button, actually. We do get flattered. The board is pretty, like, uncoordinated. So I'm just going to make a polarized third pot c-bet. When I see a raise of that size, I think it's like fairly obvious what I'm up against. I do, though, have equity with the gut shot straight draw. So, you know, my fold equity is obviously very low, which means my implied odds are very high. So I don't actually mind calling here and seeing a turn. Obviously, the turn is very bad for us. Villain leads out for quite large sizing, and we just have a very straightforward fold. All right, we get dealt rockets in the hijack. We're likely just going to be opening. We see a limper in front of us, so we're going to make it 3.5. just to try to isolate. Hopefully we see some action. All right, we see quite a large-sized 3-bet, which is interesting, especially when there's a fish left to act who just calls. So now I have a very straightforward 4-bet squeeze. I don't want to go 3 ways with aces. I definitely don't. So what are we thinking sizing-wise? We might want to actually make this something like 35, maybe even 40 bigs. We're definitely putting Imro here in a tough spot. Now, of course, this guy can't fold, and we are just going all in. We're snap calling that. He's got a pair of sixes. Absolute fucking crazy play by him. And we take down a almost 200 big blind pot. Amazing. That's the great thing about those bad players when the SPR gets really low like that. They feel compelled to shove hands like those, and you're going to be ahead a lot of the time. Obviously, when you're holding something like ace king, ace queen, and you don't quite connect with the board, it's going to feel shit. But this is the game we play, right? A king high board on an 8k6 flop, I think we have a pretty standard 1/3 pot bet here. I don't really know what villain could be calling with here, except like a middling kind of pocket pair. Obviously, 8s and 6s are there, but I think we size up now and put the pressure on hands like I think 10s probably 3 bets, 9s probably 4 bets a lot more often. So now I'm thinking we probably have to check. I think there's just too many sets now in villain's range. I don't think a hand like pocket 4s or pocket 5s is really going to call 2 streets there. So I think we have a pretty straightforward check fold now. I expect to see a bet here a lot of the time. Yeah. I think a lot of the times this is going to be a set. It might be a hand like king 10, king jack, something like that. Some rigs can show up with those hands, but we have an easy fold. If I'm being honest with myself, we probably could have checked the turn in that spot. Just because middle pocket pairs make up such a large part of a bad rig's range when he flats you from the button like that. And aside from king high, the board was quite, middling, especially with that turn card. So we could actually probably just check the turn there and give up a little bit earlier. Alternatively, one other thing you could maybe do depending on the player, of course, if you suspect villain is holding a hand like king 10, you could maybe make an overbet and just, it really depends on how capable you think he is of folding, just because, you have the nut advantage in that spot a lot of the time. We're going to be opening a3 suited, obviously. Now the board comes 10-3 queen. Now this player, we've seen him fold to C bets like 100% of the time, but I think there's just too many hands he will call with here. So I don't really think I want to be building that pot too much. When it goes check check, however, I will make a stab. Like that's 100%. I think villain is going to find it pretty hard to continue a lot of the time now. When he does call the turn, I'm expecting to face a lot of busted diamonds. We could make a block bet, just if we're worried that villain has the capability of bluffing here, which is going to achieve the same thing regardless. Like if he is holding air, like if he is holding two diamonds, then a block bet is going to get the fold anyway. Okay, what the fuck did this guy have? A 5 and a 3. Okay, so my very small block bet became a value bet. Jesus, I don't know what to say, guys. I don't really know what to say except to just be happy that there are just absolute morons that still play this game. So yeah, the reason we make that block bet is, fish most definitely are capable of bluffing if they, especially when they think it's the only way to win the pot, and the ranges are still super wide open, like they are in blind versus blind configurations. Not that they know any of that, but basically making a, I would rather make a small block bet and make villain fold than check to villain and face and have to make a difficult call on the river against what's going to be a very polarized range of hands. And if he does raise, we make an easy fold. So yeah, we can either. All right, we're going to open the threes since we are on the button. JJ4, um, mandatory 1/3 C bet because villain is going to find it ridiculously hard to continue with so many different hands. Obviously, our bet is very polarized. We're going to be full of shit a lot of the time. But like I said, villain's just going to find it super difficult to continue when he doesn't have position. Queen King offsuit in the big blind versus the button. I'm going to do a lot of calling. I'm just thinking about a possible 3 bet as well. It's a low frequency 3 bet, so I'm just going to opt to defend. Um, I would say villain has a monopoly on hands like pocket tens and obviously overpairs. We do have a lot of sets. I think we can float this flop and sort of proceed accordingly. We do have some backdoor flush equity also. Now that the board pairs, it's not looking amazing for villain. But when he snap bets again, when he snap bets for 4 bigs like that, I'm inclined to think it's more on the value side. I don't think too many regs are bluffing on turns like those. There's just too many good hands that villain has a monopoly on. We obviously unblock the nut flush draw. We block villain's king spade bluffs. Unblock all his other bluffs. But yeah, the problem is we're out of position. We have absolutely no showdown value. So the only sort of potential way that we're going to win that pot anyway is by getting super out of line when it doesn't really make sense. Jack 4 suited, I can open from the button, 100%. People are folding too much. Jack Queen offsuit under the gun, I'm going to fold. You can open it at a mixed frequency, or as a pure open if people are overfolding, like I said. I'm just going to call with King 10 offsuit, especially against a small stack like that. We flop like a double gut shot with middle pair. Going to be checking a lot here, obviously. I expect villain to make a tiny little stab a lot of the time. A pot size bet from fish are like very polarized, so you can call and reevaluate on the turn. Is possible he's holding a hand like it is possible he's doing this for protection, however, when he realizes how coordinated that board is. So I'm just going to give him the benefit of the doubt, simply because I'm drawing to far too many outs to actually make a solid hand as well. I just don't see the hand progressing in a way that I would be happy to like make too many more plays in, if that makes sense. So small blind versus under the gun. King 10 suited, it does raise at a high frequency, so we can actually go for a squeeze here, in which case I'm going to make it 13 bigs. I would be 3-betting under the gun quite a lot. See, we're definitely looking to put the pressure on. Under the gun folds. And we get called by Jacob's Guard. Now, we got a pretty shitty spot in the sense that we unblock all possible spade combos, but we do obviously have a big nut advantage in terms of having a monopoly on hands like aces and kings, etc. Now, the problem here now is that villain is very often going to show up with a hand like nines. He's going to also show up with a hand like tens. There's also a lot of sets there now. So I'm actually going to just check back this turn. I'm not going to get too out of line. I think we're just kind of spewing if we put any more money in the pot here. And I just don't really see a world in which this plays out in our favor anymore. So a bad reg has basically just been rewarded for extremely passive play. One thing about bad regs is on those low boards, they will think hands like pocket nines, pocket tens are still exceptionally good, even though you hold a monopoly on all of the monsters. You can be completely uncapped and they'll still raise you with pocket tens on a board of like 5, 2, 6. They'll still raise you, thinking they're good. And they'll do it a lot more often than you think. Okay, we flop the straight draw on a board that's typically pretty damn good for our range. I expect Button to be folding a lot here, because I think he's going to have hands like 8s and 10s a lot. We make our straight, which is fantastic. If Villain is having like a weaker ace hand, maybe he's got ace 10, ace queen, something like that, ace jack, I think we can continue to bet for value. When he calls the flop here, when he calls the flop to such a small bet, I think there are still hands like pocket nines in there. Maybe. All right, ace queen offsuit. We're going to be doing a lot of 3-betting, but it folds to us, so we just open. We get 3-bet, however, and this is a pretty strong 4-bet candidate, I would say. His sizing, it's actually quite normal. So a button versus small blind, I'm pretty sure it's a mixed frequency 4-bet. I am going to make it, I'm going to go 24 just because we have position on villain. And we get the fold, which is fantastic. Ace-9 offsuit in the big blind. We're going to be defending a lot against later position opens. Versus the button. Okay, we see a 3-bet, so now we just have an easy fold. Otherwise, I would have definitely defended there. 10-9 suited is going to be raise. I expect to see this happening quite a lot. Player looks pretty wrecky. Board is pretty good for my range. Don't think villain's gonna... He's gonna find it pretty easy to continue with Queen X, King X. It's true. But I also think he's gonna be folding a lot as well. Now that the ace comes down, I am going to make a bigger bet on the turn. If villain does call the turn bet, then we need to acknowledge that he's a huge fucking calling station. And we need to be careful, unless of course we river a jack and make the nut straight. In which case we are happy to put more money in. We can sometimes be chopping here, of course. But I feel like we're going to get a lot of calls. And we do, because villain is an absolute spaz. And it's 6-ace. Well done. Well done, sir. Did not expect that. Should never be calling that flop bet with that kind of hand. Shouldn't really even be showing up and defending with that kind of hand. But that's why we love getting heads up versus the fish. Obviously, we ran pretty good there, but if we didn't make the hand on the river, it would have been an easy check fold for us, right? Ace-4 suited, I will open. All right, ace-jack offsuit in the big blind. 2 calls in front of us. Do we want to play this hand 3 ways, or do we want to put on the squeeze? I think both options are viable. I am actually just going to flat this time around. I think a squeeze is perfectly fine as well. Villain opts to donk bet. Now, with Wishmaster 19 still left to act, I don't really want to get too tangled up in this hand anymore. Pretty much just hoping to bink one of my overcards. It's probably better to put the squeeze on back there, but calling or raising's fine. I still maintain that either one is fine. Put it this way, folding is the absolute worst thing you could do. Okay, so straight white flats from the button and snap checks. And I think we have a pretty mandatory third pot bet on this kind of board texture. Now, against this kind of player, like who's pretty unknown, we do unblock all of his bluffs, of course. But it's a very polarizing line he's taking. Could be a jack doing it for protection, you never know. But yeah, when I don't have any real stats against the guy, and what I do have tells me 100% flop, fold to flop C bet, I'm just going to make the fold, honestly. Just going to give him credit. Keep the ego out of it, give him credit. Respect aggression sometimes. Okay, folding sevens in the small blind here doesn't feel amazing. It is a low frequency 3-bet. I roll a 69. 47 big blinds. I think we're better off folding that one. Way too often at that kind of effective stack size, 40, 50. If you do make the 3-bet and the fish are very inclined to call when they see a bit more money going in, because they know there's a chance they're going to double up, you're going to face a lot of calls and just donk shoves, and hands like sevens are not going to do too well against that kind of line of play. I'm going to make a small C bet here again, just because this board is just much better for me. We now have the gut shot. Now, we unblock all club draws. Villain could be calling with a hand like sevens, but I feel like we can just fire again here a lot of the time, and I expect to see quite a few folds. A raise of that size, I'm seriously like leaning towards just narrowing this guy's range all the way down um, to Jack 10 or a set of nines, honestly. We obviously block some combos of Jack 10, but this just feels super, super underbluffed. And I don't think there's any way we can really justify continuing. If there's one thing I can tell you about these games, it's that large turn raises are nutted as fuck. They really are. You might run into the occasional spewer. Um, Against this stack size, I'm actually thinking of just flatting from the button. Or we could 3-bet to maybe a size like 6 and fold to a shove. Or maybe we 3-bet to 7, I think. And then we can just fold to a shove. Okay, we get it through. That's fantastic. But yeah, you got to be careful at those stack sizes. Like you just got to have a plan for the event that the villain more than likely can 4-bet shove you, and it's better to know beforehand what you're going to do if that happens. So you could see I was thinking about calling because I was worried about the shove, but with small blind, big blind still left to act, you're kind of pricing them in. So 3-betting and being prepared to fold to a 4-bet shove is a lot better. Queen jack off in the big blind, and it folds to us. That's all right. Ace-3 offsuit, gonna fold. 8-3, bye-bye. Ace-8 suited under the gun, I'll be opening. Looks like Hector spewed off a few of his chips. I think he was on about 500 big blinds last time I saw him, unless this is another entry, could be the case. We get raised, pretty small size. I'm going to defend here every time, especially against that sizing. Villain choosing to lead out for 3 bigs on a board of that texture is quite interesting to me. I think he knows he's going to take this down a lot of the time, and he's quite right. Like, it's just so dry. You can spam me with all the emotes you like, bro. You can. It's not going to change anything. Was that the same guy? Did we get placed next to him again? No, we didn't. Big Slick and the small blind. Going to be 3-betting here every single time when open to from the button. Queen 5 suited, I'll be raising from the button. I'm going to fold 8-2. Don't think I really need to say why. Queen 7 suited. This guy seems extremely nitty, so I'm actually just going to label him now. Expect to see Lewis here calling. Based on his stats, he's playing 25-0, albeit a small sample. Alright, I'm going to be opening Ace-10 offsuit for sure. This is interesting. We see a weird little tiny 3-bet from this guy here, so I'm just going to give him the green border, and then we see this cold 4-bet from the small blind, giving us an easy fold. Yeah, I just don't think that those recreational players, even though their sizing looks really weak, you have to realize it's actually quite strong and that they just don't understand 3-bet sizing. So we're in the big blind versus a cutoff open with Ace-Jack offsuit, and this is actually going to be a mixed frequency cool 3-bet, and we roll a 99. So we're just going to be calling. I'm going to be check calling against a lot of C-bets. Now, Villain does have a monopoly on a lot of overpair type hands. So when I call the 3 bigs, I'm more just calling to kind of see what he's going to do on the turn and kind of see what comes out. When a 9 comes, it's probably a lot better for him than it is for me. Or, that being said, like, I've got a lot of hands like 9-7 in my range. I'm going to have a Yeah, I'm going to have a lot of 9-7 type hands. My hand is a pure bluff catch at this point. Um, yeah, I think it's actually better to just check and maybe give villain the opportunity to bluff here. I expect him to be checking with a lot of spade draws on that kind of turn. We could be looking at like a very mergy river bet here, but we unblock all of villain's possible bluffs with the spades. We do unblock hands like, I guess, J10, Queen 10, stuff like that. I'm actually going to make the call. And yes, it's 2 spades. Yeah, good to give villain the chance to bluff there. Quite happy with how that one went. Eight, 9 offsuit, I will open from the button. It's a low frequency raise, but again, just I'm widening my ranges a bit. King 9 off, I'll be stealing. We do get flattered now. The board, I wouldn't say, is particularly fantastic for us. I'm going to check this one back, even though I'd very often be making the c-bet. When villain leads out for 3, it's one of those spots where you have to wonder, is villain leading out simply because he was checked to, or is it complete air? I'm inclined to think like this is definitely a polarizing action. With the king 9, the kind of sort of double gut shot with backdoor flush equity, I don't actually mind continuing here. I think K high is actually sometimes going to be good, especially when it goes check check like this. So we got 2 options. We can make a small block bet, or we can check and possibly face a bluff. I actually like the small kind of block bet. Okay, villain has 9 jack. Okay. Don't hate my line. Don't love it either. Definitely one to actually think about a bit more. I'm going to tag it. I'm not sure if the block bet was the right play there. I feel like it was a little bit too mergy. We probably should have like considered turning our hand into a bluff catch rather than making a bet. I feel like on that board texture, if villain does have a jack, it's very often going to go check check, and we're going to see a cheap showdown. Don't know if villain will bluff. Yeah, weird spot. Not weird, but interesting. Not quite sure about that one. Definitely felt the flop C bit was polarized though, so I don't really hate calling the flop. Obviously, we're going to be checking the turn. I don't hate that. And yeah, when it goes check check, the small block bet as opposed to like a 2/3 pot bet was because we felt like we're still going to fold out the air, right? The question is, would we fold out a jack? The answer is, I don't think we would. Like, if we went 2/3, would a jack fold when it's a recreational player? Probably not. So what we probably neglected to really consider was the money saving aspect of the small bet, which would make my line probably better than the 2/3 bluff. Queen jack suited in the small blind. This villain folds to 3 bets a lot. So we got a mandatory 3-bet here. Let's make it 10 bigs. And villain just insta-folds. His 4-bet percentage is like 3%. So I do expect it to just fold through a lot. I'll be folding to action in front of me. Right, pocket nines on the button. We have the privilege of opening and acting first. And folding it through. Alright, ace-6, we will be opening from the small blind. Don't really know anything about this guy, seen him twice. See, a lot of the time I would elect to go for the squeeze here. Problem is Isadoria is pretty short stacked. Can we fold a hand like King 10 suited though? I'm not going to get the chance to make the decision. I timed out. I think I've run the clock a little bit too often today. My bad. I don't think we're going to see a lot of shoves from that short stacked player, but I also don't think we're going to see a lot of folds either. All right, we get called by boogies. Now the board is quite wet. We obviously block a lot of the diamond draws, but there's also straight draws out there. And who knows, villain could be happy to continue with 2 diamonds. So I'm actually going to size up here. Like if I had a hand like aces or kings, I would probably want to size up as well. So I'm just going to choose 1 static bet sizing for my entire range. We do get the fold. All right, pocket 10s on the button versus an undergun raise. 10s is a mixed frequency versus under the gun, and I roll a 4. How often does this guy fold to 3 bets? It looks like he never does. He's only had the chance to 3 times, though, from what I've seen. I haven't seen him make a 4-bet yet. And I do expect that to happen here sometimes. He actually folds. You know, when they run the clock like that, there's always that, like, there's always this nagging feeling in the back of my mind. Is he just thinking about his sizing, you know? And I expect the 4-bet to come. Alright, pocket fives in the big blind. We're going to be doing a lot of defending. Versus the cutoff, yeah, we're calling like every single time here. Board comes out pretty damn good for cutoff's range. So I think we have a pretty straightforward line that we're going to be taking here, which is just check fold probably every time. I just don't feel like there are some merged hands in there, which we obviously don't beat. So we're going to have to maybe try to take the initiative and bluff him. But there's going to be a lot of value hands in his range, so easy fold. Seven, eight suited, cut off, we will raise. We get called by the big blind and we flop middle pair. All right. Now, this is one of those spots where I think a tiny little c-bet is going to get the job done a lot. Now, villain just immediately donks 8.5. So we're looking at a hand like 6-8. He likes the 5. Could be looking at what, 3-6 suited. It's a very strange line taken by villain. Very strange indeed. I am definitely going to give him the benefit of the doubt. We do unblock all of his bluffs, but against that kind of sizing, I'm really not happy. It's going to be a lot of queen X as well. Like, he calls the bet because he's got the queen, possibly a weaker queen, which he thinks is really, really good. There's actually going to be a lot of two-paired kind of queen hands there as well. And he's going to donk pot bet like that for protection when he sees it's now a duotone board. That's my general feeling. We 3-bet A9, because why not? Queen 10 off, we're going to fold. Pretty straightforward. Okay, we get 3-bet by the small blind with Queen Jack suited on the button. I think we're doing a lot of calling here, right? It is actually a mixed frequency 3-bet, 4-bet. And we roll 86, which is typically the more passive action. So we can just call. I don't like it. We face a small c-bet, and I don't really see, like, we unblock all the semi-bluffs. Villain has a monopoly on everything good here, but I think we can just fold. We can just fold on the flop. Don't really see how that hand changes for the better for us. Can't always fold to 3-bets. Alright, we're going to open here. I think Guy folds 100% to steals thus far. Not that this is particularly wide or anything, just an observation. Right, we get raised by the small blind. We're definitely not folding. I think we're calling a lot with king queen off. Don't think we're doing a ton of 3-betting. All right, now on this kind of texture, when it goes check like that, I feel like I have to bet, and I'm more inclined to size my bet on the larger size as well. On the larger side, rather. So many people raise from the small blind and then just check give up, regardless of board texture. Ace, eight of hearts in the small blind. We're going to fold when under the gun opens. Okay, button opens to 3, and we're in the big blind with 7-6 suited. I'm pretty sure we're defending right, like all the time. Yeah, I'd say so. And look at that board. I think we have a pretty straightforward line here. Villain should probably be 1/3 potting a lot of the time, but he opts to go just over half, which is, don't really know what to think of that, but we're definitely not continuing. Pocket twos, I'm going to fold. Big Rich. This guy's playing 63-6 VPIP. And then when this guy makes it 4, I have an easy decision. Queen 2, straight to the muck. From the cutoff, Jack 9 off. Nah, it's a little bit wide. All right, we're opening 10-9 suited from the button. Player in the blinds is definitely on the nitty side, and he makes it 12. So like exploitive fold every single time. He's got a 3-bet percentage of like 2, and he just, his sizing is it's wrong. It's too large. So I think we could safely assume Guy just wants to get it in there, right? And we're not going to give him our money, are we? No, we're not. If it folds to me, I'll be opening this hand. Ace 10 offsuit versus an under the gun open is pretty much just typically asking for trouble. It does usually fold. Even when priced in, I think it's better to just find the fold button. Queen 6 in the cutoff. We can certainly open that. And we shall. And it just snap folds. Queen 4 suited in the cutoff. Is Queen 5 suited minimum? Yeah, it's a little bit too wide. Let's not go too crazy with the exploits. Like, I've pretty much just widened my ranges to include the mixed frequency hands, but I don't want to widen them so much that I include hands that I normally wouldn't play. 7-6 suited, we're going to be defending pretty much every single time here. Could we construct a donking range on this type of board? I mean, you could. Alright, villain makes it pretty small. I feel like we're okay to continue with backdoor flush equity. Now that the ace comes on the turn, we're probably in pretty shitty shape. So I feel like it's a pretty straightforward check fold scenario from here on in. Alright, we get the Cowboys in the small blind. Unfortunately, no action in front of us, and we see a fold. Right, King 3 suited on the button. Going to be opening any suited king from that late, but with an open in front of us, an easy fold. Right, ace-10 offsuit in the small blind. Versus the cutoff, a 3-bet is probably a bit too wide. Versus the button, we can work it in, but it folds around to us, and we are left against a recreational player with a very small stack. He calls, which is quite nice. Look, I'm inclined to think he's going to find it pretty hard to continue on this board, and I'm inclined to think that if he does shove over my very small continuation bet, that we're in bad shape, and we can quite easily just get away from this one. But I expect to see a fold here a lot. I also expect to sometimes see a shove. Don't expect to see a ton of calling, but that's what happens. So we have to ask ourselves now, what are we getting value from? And the answer is drawing hands, basically. But I'm going to check this one. Mainly because the pot is now at such a size where we're going to see a lot more shoves with like diamond combos, straight combos. So now it's basically boat versus quads. So I think we just check back and maybe give villain a chance to bluff. Yeah, I don't really see what villain could call a small bet here with. So I think checking and just calling is the better play. I expect to see hands like Queen King, maybe some kind of ace rag. All right, yeah, 9 king makes sense. Yeah, sure. Yeah, the problem against like recreational players, even when you know that they're on drawing hands, Like, ranges are still pretty polarized there, so... Wow, are they polarized or are they more merged? I'd have to think about that. Like, do we hate it if we bet and then he shoves us on the turn in that spot? Maybe we do. We don't like it, that's for sure. We're not ecstatic. But yeah, I'd much rather just give him a chance to bluff with his busted draws on the river. Seems to make a lot more sense to me. King 2 suited. Are we defending here every single time? I think we are. Versus a button open. Yes, we are. We're defending. Flop 10 ace 9. Rainbow. Pretty good for villain. There is backdoor equity here. I actually think we can continue here. Like, we can call one bet, definitely. So yeah, we're now looking at a gut shot straight draw. We've lost our flush equity, which is unfortunate. Interesting that it goes check, check. We kind of have to ask ourselves here, why would villain check that turn? We could be looking at a hand like sixes or sevens. Do we have a mandatory bet? I kind of feel like we might have a mandatory bluff at this point. There's going to be a lot of hands in there too, like, okay, queen 7 offsuit. Like, that's your best bluff catcher, is it? That's your best bluff catcher, okay. Don't know about calling station. But I do think it's a hand that you definitely should not be opening with, that's for sure. So I'm definitely going to be noting that. All right, we face a donk bet from the big blind here, and you know the board is typically much better for us, so we're not going to fold. The question here, however, is this the kind of player that thinks a hand like ace-4 offsuit is any good here? Like, I feel like his line so far is very mergy, so I think checking back probably makes more sense, just because I don't know if he can actually find a fold. If it is a hand like ace-4 offsuit, he's not going to fold to a river bet, I don't think. So yeah, it's just so bad. I don't know if he ever folds to a turn or river bet in that spot. I'm not risking it. There's just too many cooling stations down here. Too many cooling stations. Maybe sometimes we do have to bluff in that spot if we know more about the player and know more about how, like, at what frequency he's going to fold. What kind of stats did I have on him? I can't see it in the replayer. I'd have to check in Poker Tracker. Where are we? Yeah, I'll tag that one for review. We got an interesting spot here with Ace Queen suited because we've got 3 callers and we really don't want to just... I think we want to put on the squeeze. I don't think we want to go 4 ways with a hand like this. Just feels really bad. We get called by the pre-flop raiser, so he essentially caps himself. Now we've got a bit of a strange spot. Do we have to make a mandatory small C bet? We probably do. What sort of hands are these guys going to be happy to continue with? 9s, jacks. Would 10s carry on here? Ace Jack, Pocket Jacks. We've already said that. All right, the king comes down, and the king is not. It's not terrible for us, but it hits things like Ace King quite often. So I feel like we probably have to throw out the half pot bet here. Um, might size it down a little bit. We do thankfully have outs to a straight. Question is, like, he's never going to fold jacks here, obviously. He can fold ace jack, though, which we're happy to see. Yeah, we could have definitely found ourselves in trouble, but that turn card really helped us. That turn card really, really helped us because we have a monopoly on pocket kings. I feel like we even have maybe not a monopoly, but we share ace king. Like I've got more ace king in my range than he does. Let's go back just 1 second. Queen ace. Okay, we get dealt rockets, so let's just pay attention to this for now. We make it standard open. And we get called by the big blind. Now we flop top set on a very dry board. So I think the play here is to actually check back. All right, villain checks it again. And we do, like, we block the nuttier end of the spade draws, but I feel like in this spot I'm going to be turn probing a lot with my air. So I'm just going to go ahead and fire it out. Unfortunately, villain just folds. I don't think there's much we can really do about that against a nittier reg like him. Checking back the flop is definitely the play. Best you can sort of hope for in those spots is that villain either flops or turns a set, really. Or he's happy to continue with a hand like 8-9 spades or something of that nature. He can also continue with ace X, but I feel like like ace 10 should be folding. I was under the gun, right? No, I was hijack. So yeah, sometimes ace 10 shows up there. Um, ace jack can show up there. Ace queen probably still 3 bets versus hijack. So yeah, his ace X range is very narrow. Um, we're more hoping that villain's sitting on 2 spades. Or he's hit a set, which would be fucking amazing. Ace 9 suited versus an under the gun open. We could probably call here sometimes. I don't do a lot of calling from the button. It's actually a mixed frequency 3-bet, so I might actually just go for it as an exploit. Haven't played too many hands against this player to really know what to expect. But when he makes the 4-bet, we just let that one go. We have a pretty easy fold. I expect to get the fold there a lot. Yeah, versus a 4-bet, we can if we are overfolding versus 3-bets, we are especially overfolding versus 4-bets at this level. This guy, first time I've seen him fold to a steal. I've only got 6 hands with him, so make of that what you will. I'm not going to make a whole lot of it. 6-9, too wide. I'm actually going to sit out the next blind and have a little bit of a break because I feel my focus waning a little bit. I will open ace-3 suited. Right, we get a recreational player limping, so we're going to give him the green border. Opens to 4, we have an easy fold. I'd be doing the same. Bar the sizing, of course. I'd be going 3.5, but very small thing to be kind of nitpicking there. And now I'm going to stop the recording and have a break.